I, 22, live with my twin brother, Jake, and our dad, in a modest house in the suburbs. Our dad, who's in his late 50s, has always been a hardworking but somewhat distant father. He's a mechanic and takes great pride in his vintage car, a classic 1965 Mustang that's his prized possession. The Mustang is more than just a car to him. It's a symbol of all the years he spent working long hours in the garage, sacrificing so much to provide for us. Growing up, I always knew that someday that car would be ours, or at least half of it would be mine and Jake's. Jake and I are close, as most twins are, but we've always had our differences. While I'm the responsible one, having already completed college and holding down a stable job, Jake has struggled with finding his path. He's tried different colleges, jobs, gigs, but nothing really stuck for him. Despite all that, he's a good guy with a big heart, always willing to lend a hand or an ear when someone needs it. Recently, Jake got tangled up in some misfortunes. He had trusted a friend who needed a place to crash, and that friend ended up being involved in some trouble with the law. Unfortunately, Jake got dragged into it when he was arrested during a police raid at a party that was actually a front for illegal activities. The charges are not minor, and the situation is dire. Bail was set ridiculously high, and with no savings or assets, Jake was staring at jail time until a proper court hearing. As his brother, I knew I had to step in and help. But our dad's financial situation has been tight for years since the divorce, and every penny goes into maintaining the house and his beloved Mustang. We talked about it, and Dad said there's no way he could help with Jake's bail without selling something significant, and the only thing of value besides our house was the Mustang. With no other options and time running out, the situation felt hopeless. I found myself in a tough spot, watching my twin suffer, knowing I couldn't do much without hurting someone deeply, either Jake or Dad. Eventually, a thought crept in that gnawed at the back of my mind. I knew Dad was planning on giving us the Mustang one day. What if I just sold the car now and kept the financial disaster from crashing down on Jake? It was drastic, and I felt sick just thinking about it. But I kept imagining Jake sitting there in that cell, guilty by association, with nobody else to turn to. After a sleepless night wrestling with my conscience, I made the decision. I knew a few collectors who would jump at the chance to buy a vintage Mustang, and with Dad at work, I hastily arranged a buyer. The car sold faster than I expected. It was gone, and I had the money needed to bail Jake out. The urgency of the situation meant I hadn't really thought everything through. When I picked Jake up from the police station, the relief on his face was worth it for a millisecond, until I remembered what I'd done. Jake was torn between thanking me and worrying about Dad's reaction. When we got home, I could barely face Dad. The empty garage spoke volumes, and guilt hit me like a wave. Dad was silent when I told him, not even looking up from his spot at the kitchen table. His eyes were hollow, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world suddenly dropped on them. "What did you do?" he finally whispered, his voice soft but piercing. I tried to explain the predicament, the urgency, hoping deep down he'd understand that I did it out of love for Jake. The reality was crushing. I betrayed him, sold something so precious, something I had no right to. Dad just shook his head, the disappointment etched into every line of his face. I knew he couldn't find it in his heart to forgive me right then, and rightfully so. I had crossed an unforgivable line, and the guilt settled in my stomach like lead. We barely spoke for weeks. Jake was trying to clear his name and sort the legal mess, often disappearing to meet with lawyers and work odd jobs to repay the money. But the house became a tension zone. Every family dinner was a silent event filled with unspoken words and anger simmering just beneath the surface. Update 1. The tension in the house was unbearable. Jake tried talking to Dad several times, attempting to shoulder part of the blame and explain that the decision to sell the Mustang was out of desperation. But Dad wasn't ready to hear it from either of us. At one point, Jake suggested we could buy Dad another Mustang someday. It sounded naive and unrealistic, given our current financial situation, and only seemed to deepen Dad's disappointment. He looked at us as if we were still naive kids making promises we couldn't keep. I even contacted the buyer to see if there was any way to reverse the deal to get the Mustang back, but it was already being restored in a manner that wasn't financially or logically feasible for us to disrupt. It was gone for good, and with it seemingly any chance to amend the rift in our family. Days turned into weeks, and it seemed the silent treatment had become the norm. I understood Dad's pain and anger because I felt it too. I had acted in haste, and it left a wound that was slow to heal. In the meantime, Jake's court date kept looming over our heads, and the stress of the situation made it hard to concentrate at work, keeping me on edge all of the time. Update 2, a few more weeks passed, and things haven't really improved. Jake's legal issues are slowly getting untangled, but the process is long and arduous. Dad still hasn't processed the betrayal, and his hurt is palpable. We exist in the same space, but conversations are clipped and transactional. Jake suggested we start saving money to find a new normal. He even picked up extra shifts at a local diner, trying to contribute more to the household and make a tangible gesture to show Dad he was changing, that we weren't just thoughtless sons who didn't appreciate the sacrifices Dad made for us. One night while Jake was at work, Dad and I found ourselves alone in the living room. I thought about trying to talk, to really discuss the depth of everything, but words failed me. I wanted to say so much. I wanted to tell him I understood why the Mustang mattered so much. I wanted to promise I'd work endlessly to make things right. But instead, we watched the nightly news in silence, the distance between us feeling wider than ever. Final reflection, I've never felt more torn in my life. On one hand, I did what I thought was right at the time. I prioritized my brother's immediate freedom over a car. But on the other hand, I sold our dad's most cherished possession without his consent, even though it was technically going to be mine someday. I see the hurt in Dad's eyes every day, and it only amplifies my guilt. Jake and I were always taught to value family above all, but what happens when you must choose between saving your brother or betraying your father? I thought I made the right decision to protect my twin, but the cost was a lifetime of trust. Dad's demeanor has shifted from someone who always seemed invincible to a man who's lost something profoundly valuable. I've tried to find ways to fix things, hoping time would dilute the resentment and anger. But it's evident the road to forgiveness is long and grueling. Every family dinner, every passing moment reminds me of the gravity of my choice. Jake and Dad barely say a word to each other unless absolutely necessary, leaving me to mediate our fractured family dynamic. So now here I am, stuck with the unrelenting discomfort and regret of my decision. I sold my dad's legacy, a piece of his soul, and I'm left to wonder if the act of desperation to save one brother was worth potentially losing another. So, am I the a-hole? The answer is complicated. The lines between what's right and what's wrong have blurred, leaving us tangled in unresolved emotions and anger. Both Jake and Dad can't seem to situate their feelings, and honestly, neither can I.